Hey guys, how's it going? My name is Ben, and it's time to man up. Today, what I want to talk about is something that a lot of times we get confused about, right? A lot of times we have this mentality or this mindset where we think that God is going to do everything for us. Now, don't misunderstand what I'm saying. Don't think that I'm saying that God doesn't do everything for us, but I'm just saying that there's an action step that is always required on our behalf. And as if you take a look at the Bible and you just look at time after time, every time that God did something, He always commanded that person receiving to do something first. It wasn't something that was just done to them, it was something that was done through them in a sense. And you start looking in the first accounts and you start looking in the Old Testament, you take a look at somebody great like Moses, right? And you have Moses there, and he sees that burning bush, and God comes and He shows him His glory and all these other good stuff. And God says, "I'm gonna send you out so you can release my people." Now you gotta think about this. He's sending them out. Now it's recorded in the Bible, and a lot of us know about what God did through Moses when He went out there with the 10 plagues and how He released the people. But a lot of times we don't take time to just examine the situation of what was really going on. Who was Moses, right? We know that Moses was already running away. He was already a fugitive. So you have to understand the dynamics of the story in order to comprehend it a little bit better. Because let's just think about it. Most of the time we just want to run away. We just want to run away from things from our past, and we just don't want it to catch up to us. And then we also want for God to do everything for us. We just want to sit down and let God do His work and do whatever He wants to do as we just sit down and relax. Now let's take a look at Moses. He was a fugitive. He was running from the law. Now God's telling him, "Hey, I want you to go back into the land of Egypt and let my people go," right? And set my people free. Now you start thinking, wait a minute, God, do you not realize that I'm a fugitive in that land? Do you not realize that if I go back, I'm probably going to be put to death or in prison for the rest of my life because I committed murder and that's why I'm running away? And God's saying, go back into that land where you're a fugitive, And it's like, how mind blowing is that? Moses could have been like, no, okay, well, God's going to use me. God already spoke to me directly, face to face, telling me that He's going to use me to set my people free. So I'm just going to sit around, lounging around, watching these cows, watching these goats here in the mountains until that happens, because God has a destiny for me, right? So I'm just going to sit around for God to do His work while I lounge around in the desert, just sipping on whatever he's drinking, coconuts right there in the desert, wherever they're at. I don't know the demographics, but just sitting around, lounging, taking care of the cows, taking care of whatever animals he was taking care of until God did His part. But no, he had to get up. He had to embrace the battle. See, a lot of Christians out there, a lot of us, right? Wouldn't it be awesome? We want the victory, and we have the victory. But let's remember that that word victory is not a simple word. It's something when you engage into battle and you engage into competition and you come out victorious. You have the victory. You have the win. It's not one of those, here you go, thank you for participating. No, it's you took the victory. You won in battle. You faced battle and you came out victorious. See, a lot of times we want the victory without actually going into battle. And this is where it gets tricky, because yes, I understand when you step into battle, God does it all for you at that moment. But first we have to get up and step up and encounter these giants, encounter the Pharaoh. Imagine that. He's telling them to go back to a land where he's wanted. Not only that, he's wanting Moses to go talk to the main person in charge, the superpower. Go up to the president of the United States and tell him, hey, this is what's going to happen and this is how it's going to go down. And all throughout the Bible, you find different scriptures where God told the prophet God told somebody to just do something. Well, every time when you look in the Old Testament, it was based in a lot of battlefields. David facing Goliath, he had to stand up and face the giant. He couldn't have been in the tent and said, you know what, God said I was gonna deliver my people by defeating the giant, so I'm just gonna go ahead and chill here until that giant dies on its own. No, he had to get up and face it. A lot of times we have this mentality where I'm just gonna sit around while God does his part, because it's all God's plan, right? It's just God's plan, and he's gonna bring it to pass. Remember, it's God's plan for your life. It's just a plan, and it's ineffective until that plan is put into use. So you have to take the plan that God gives you and put it into use, and you have to actually follow the plan. And that's when God starts doing everything. Yes, God will do 100% times more with the little bit that you give. You give in a 2% effort and God's going to put in 1,000% effort. But he needs you to stand up. He needs you to do something. We can't just stay standing still. Unless he is telling you to stand still. But we always have to constantly find the direction. But don't think that you're going to stand still for the rest of your life, because you're not. You want to become a millionaire, you want to make money, but you want to sit around in your couch. You want to change the world for Jesus, but you want to sit around in your couch until I don't know what you want. You want a ministry to come knock on your door and tell you, hey, would you like to lead this? No, because remember that what you do in secret, God is going to put in public. When David was being a shepherd, he was in secret. Nobody knew his name, because God was preparing him to fight the bears and the lions. So the moment that he faced Goliath, he wasn't going to run. He did the same thing with Moses. Moses was running for years, and then he said, okay, now go back. And that's what he's doing with us. He's preparing us in secret. Yeah, nobody might know your name right now, and I understand what you're saying. I don't want anybody to know my name. I understand what you're saying. But when you're in leadership, God propels you into leadership. And I understand that's not something that we're making ourselves. We don't have to market ourselves as a leader. We don't have to brand ourselves. We don't have to look for a brand for your ministry for it to blow up. No, you have to be faithful in the little. You have to have integrity when nobody's watching. That's where God is preparing you. You have been faithful in little, I will put you over much. And that is where life change happens. When you prepare for the battle thousands of times in your head. When you're filling yourself up with the word of God every single day. So the day that battle shows up, you're not running away scared. You're walking and you're running towards it confidently. Because God has given us the victory. But remember, the word victory is not something, it's not one of those prizes again that they just give you for participation. It's actually going in and facing and overcoming, not through your strength. Remember, when Jesus was on the cross, he said, it is finished. He meant that his part is now finished. He's done it all. He's given us all things pertaining to life. Now it's your turn to get up. And yes, it's going to be with God's strength. And yes, it's going to be all God. But you have to get up. We can't just sit there and think that God is going to do it all for us. No, he requires obedience, and obedience requires action. It requires for you to stand up. And remember, when God gives you a promise, when God gave Moses that promise of him setting the people free, Moses had to do one thing, is believe it. When God told David that the giant would fall, David had to believe it. And when you believe something, when you believe the promise, it changes the course of your life. It changes your direction. It changes your actions. Because if David wouldn't believe that God was going to deliver Goliath, he would have never faced him. He would have stayed hiding like everybody else was in the army. If Moses wouldn't have believed that God was with him, he would have never faced the same government that was looking for him as a fugitive. But they had to believe it. They had to stand up and take action. Because when you believe something, you stand up and you take action if you really believe it. If you really believe God has spoken to you about a business, about a ministry, about anything in life, Go after it. It should be shown in your actions. Faith without works is dead. And just remember that God will always pull through. The problem is that, are you really believing that God's going to use you while you're sitting in your couch watching TV? Are you really believing that God is going to use you when all you're worried about is your own life and your own finances and your own everything engulfed in your own little selfish bubble? But when you really believe, you will step out of your comfort zone. You will step outside of the boat and onto the waters that are turbulent, onto the waters that are just crashing against the boat, crashing against you as you walk on the waves. But you believe the promise that God has given you. And that is what it takes for us to believe. And when we believe, it leads to action. We stand up and we do something. So do you believe that God has called you to be the man, the leader in your family? If you do, it's time to stand up. It's time to act and engage in the position that God has put us in. If you believe God gave you a business idea, pursue it. If you believe God gave you a ministry, get up and do it. Don't wait for life to fall into place. And I promise, the first steps you make, God will make everything else fall into place. But don't stop there. Keep moving. Because it requires action. It requires for you to move. So let's stop sitting around hoping that the world will change from one day to another, because it takes us to change the world. God works through us for His glory, but He works through us. So let's stand up and let's expand God's kingdom, because there's a calling and a purpose in your life that nobody else can fulfill. It's in your life. Nobody else was able to liberate the people from the Egyptian stronghold. It had to be Moses. But Moses had to believe. What has God set you to do that we have been unwilling to do? That nobody else will do it better than you. Thank you guys for listening. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Till next week.